Hello and welcome. The multiverse you know operates on rules. Gravity binds matter. Time moves forward. Cause precedes effect. Magic follows patterns. Even wild magic has its own twisted logic. But these rules, these fundamental laws that govern everything from the smallest mote of dust to the movements of gods themselves, were not always absolute. They are boundaries, protective walls, and beyond those walls, pressing against them with patient inevitability, writhes something that remembers when there were no walls at all. The far realm defies every attempt to understand it through conventional cosmology. When scholars create their grand models of the planes, whether they draw the great wheel with its ordered arrangement of outer planes, or the world tree connecting realms through divine roots and branches, they always place the far realm at the very edge of their diagrams. Some mark it as existing outside the entire structure. Others refuse to include it at all, leaving only blank parchment and warnings scrawled in margins. Because the far realm does not exist in relation to other planes in any way mortal minds can truly process. It occupies no direction. It neighbors nothing. It simply exists beyond, outside, and utterly separate from the ordered reality you inhabit. The far realm first became widely known to inhabitants of the ordered multiverse through an event so catastrophic that its echoes still ripple through history. In ancient times, long before most current civilizations rose to power, a group of elven mages pursued knowledge with relentless ambition. These were not ordinary spellcasters. They commanded magic that could reshape landscapes and bend the very fabric of reality. But even with all their power, mysteries remained beyond their grasp. They sought to understand the fundamental nature of existence itself, to peer into spaces beyond the known planes. These elven wizards constructed a portal of unprecedented sophistication, a gateway they called the Vast Gate, designed to breach the boundaries between dimensions and reach beyond the multiverse itself. They opened doorways to the elemental chaos and survived. They gazed into the abyss and withdrew unscathed. Their confidence grew with each successful expedition. They believed themselves capable of safely studying any realm, no matter how dangerous. And then they pushed further than any had gone before, piercing through the outer boundaries of reality itself. They breached the barrier to the far realm. What happened next destroyed their entire civilization. The corruption spread immediately, not surging through the portal like invading armies, but seeping like poison into the very fabric of local reality. The air around the gateway began exhibiting properties that should not exist. Angles formed that hurt to perceive directly. Colors manifested that had no place in any visible spectrum. Hues that were simultaneously sounds, and textures and emotions. The elves who stood closest to the portal began changing before the eyes of their horrified colleagues. Their flesh rippled with alien geometries. Their screams came backward, arriving before they opened their mouths to voice them. Their bodies existed in multiple states simultaneously, alive and dead, and neither and both. The survivors eventually managed to seal the portal, but they could not undo what had been done. The vast gate had opened. The far realm had touched the ordered multiverse, and that contact could never be completely severed. Even with the gate closed, thin places remained where far realm energy continued to seep through, corrupting reality in subtle and not so subtle ways. The far realm exists outside of time itself. This fundamental truth shapes everything about its nature and its interaction with ordered reality. Time, as you experience it, flows in one direction. Moments pass sequentially. The past remains fixed while the future stretches ahead, malleable and unknown. But in the far realm, time does not flow. It pools and eddies. It contradicts itself. Events occur before their causes. Consequences manifest without any preceding actions. Some regions of the far realm experience all moments simultaneously, a state where past, present, and future collapse into a single eternal now. Other areas exist frozen in never-time, where nothing has ever happened and nothing ever will. Yet beings still move and act within those impossible spaces. The substance of reality itself behaves differently in the far realm. Matter exists in states that violate every known principle of physical existence. Solid objects flow like liquid while maintaining their solidity. Liquids hang motionless in space as crystalline geometric shapes. Energy becomes tangible, something you can touch and hold, while physical objects transform into abstract concepts that somehow still occupy measurable space. The very laws of nature that govern the ordered multiverse simply cease to apply, replaced by alien principles that shift and change without pattern or predictability. Before the Dawn War, that ancient conflict between gods and primordials that shaped the fundamental nature of reality, the far realm remained sealed away from the ordered multiverse by a construction known as the Living Gate. This massive portal existed at the furthest reaches of the astral sea, serving as the ultimate barrier between ordered reality and the chaos beyond. The Living Gate was guarded by a powerful entity whose sole purpose involved maintaining that separation. During the Dawn War, the god Tharisdan discovered the Living Gate, and for reasons that remain unclear, chose to destroy its guardian and open the portal. Whether Tharisdan sought to weaponize far realm energy against the primordials, or had already been corrupted by far realm influence, remains a matter of theological debate. What is known is that opening the living gate released corruptive energy from the far realm directly into the astral sea. The gods, led by Peller, whose divine domain was destroyed in the process, managed to destroy the living gate itself to stop the invasion. But the destruction of the gate meant there was no longer any absolute barrier preventing far realm incursion. The multiverse became permanently vulnerable to far realm influence, seeping through wherever reality grew thin. Some planar scholars theorize that psionics, those mental powers that operate independently of conventional magic, developed as a response to far realm intrusion. According to this interpretation, psionic abilities function like antibodies in a living organism, a defensive reaction created by reality itself to fight the infection of far realm influence. Psionic power draws from mental discipline and willpower, rather than from the weave of magic or divine blessing. It represents a completely different source of supernatural ability. This could imply that the multiverse itself possesses some form of immune response, generating new capabilities to combat existential threats. This theory gains some support from the observation that aberrations, those creatures most strongly connected to the far realm, often possess powerful psionic abilities themselves. Mind flayers dominate thoughts and shatter minds with purely mental force. Aboleths reach across vast distances with telepathic tendrils. Based on what scholars have documented, the correlation between far realm corruption and psionic potential suggests a fundamental connection. One interpretation holds that psionic power represents reality's immune system, developing the same capabilities as the disease it fights, learning to combat alien mental influence by wielding similar mental weapons. Others propose that psionics actually originated in the far realm and spread to the ordered multiverse through the same breaches that allowed aberrations through. Without definitive divine revelation on the subject, the true origin of psionic power remains a matter of ongoing scholarly debate. The inhabitants of the far realm defy every attempt at categorization or taxonomy. They are called aberrations, a term that literally means deviation from what is normal or expected. But that word fails to capture the profound wrongness of these entities. They are not simply abnormal. They represent existence functioning according to completely different principles. Creatures like mind flayers, beholders, and aboleths did not evolve through natural selection. They did not develop through divine creation. They emerged from the far realm's impossible chaos, each one a manifestation of alien concepts given physical form. The Chaorti serve as particularly tragic examples of what happens when mortals from the ordered multiverse enter the far realm directly. According to documented accounts, these beings were once wizards of tremendous power who constructed their own portal to the far realm and stepped through, confident in their magical protections and their ability to study and survive any environment. The moment they entered, a nameless entity of unimaginable power took interest in them. This being seized the explorers and transformed them at fundamental levels. Their bodies became desiccated, twisted into forms that barely resembled their original humanoid shapes. Their minds shattered and reformed according to alien patterns. Their very souls were rewritten, making them native to the far realm, rather than the ordered multiverse they had left behind. When the transformed Kaorti returned through the portal they had created, they no longer recognized the world they had departed. Everything seemed wrong to them now, too ordered, too structured, too sane. They immediately began working to transform their surroundings, reshaping reality to match the far realm's chaotic impossibility. They wanted to make the multiverse more comfortable for themselves, to spread the corruption that had consumed them, until everything reflected the maddening chaos they now called home. The elder evils represent the most powerful and terrifying entities connected to the far realm. These are beings of such immense power and alien nature that even the gods regard them with fear and caution. Some theological texts propose that the elder evils existed before the current multiverse took its ordered form, possibly as native inhabitants of whatever primordial state preceded creation. If this interpretation holds any truth, the elder evils would remember when there were no natural laws to constrain them. Tharisdan, known as the Chained God, stands among the most infamous of beings connected to far realm corruption. This deity of eternal darkness, decay, entropy, malign knowledge, insanity, and cold craves nothing less than the complete unmaking of the universe. Tharisdan seeks to destroy everything, himself included, reducing all of existence back to primordial nothingness. During the Dawn War, he created the abyss itself, an act so destructive and catastrophic that the other gods were forced to imprison him in chains of divine energy. Despite his imprisonment on some unknown plane, Tharisdan can still grant spells and power to his mad cultists. But his clerics cannot draw power from him in the normal way that divine spellcasters channel their deity's energy. They must be in physical contact with one of his unholy artifacts, relics of terrible power that serve as conduits to their imprisoned god. The gems of Tharisdan, of which 333 are believed to exist, function as minor artifacts that allow his followers to touch his consciousness and receive his dark blessings. The cultists who worship Tharisdan operate in absolute secrecy, their temples hidden in remote and forgotten places. Many low-ranking members merely seek revenge against society or power over their enemies, unaware that their god's ultimate goal involves the destruction of all existence, including themselves. The cult's leaders, however, fully understand what they work toward. They gather artifacts. They seek the hidden places where Tharisdun's essence can be contacted. They plan for the day when they can free their chained deity, believing in their madness that he will spare his loyal servants when he unmakes reality. Great Old One warlocks represent another form of connection between mortals and the far realm's incomprehensible entities. These spellcasters form pacts with beings of such alien nature that their motivations cannot be understood through mortal reasoning. Entities like Tharisdun, Hadar the Dark Hunger, or things even stranger and more terrible. The relationship between warlock and patron operates very differently from other pact magic. In many cases, the Great Old One patron remains completely unaware of the warlock's existence. The warlock opened some metaphorical or literal window to the far realm, glimpsed truths that shattered their understanding of reality, and now draws power from that exposure. The abilities they gain are not gifts consciously bestowed. They are byproducts of contact with far realm energy, consequences of forbidden knowledge, manifestations of slowly spreading madness. The warlock believes they have made a pact, but what actually occurred might be closer to infection. They have touched something that should not be touched, and that contact changed them in ways they are learning to weaponize as supernatural power. Even when a Great Old One does acknowledge the warlock's existence, the nature of the pact defies normal comprehension. These beings exist according to values utterly alien to mortal understanding. They might consume the warlock's dreams as payment for power. They might steal the warlock's ability to perceive certain colors. They might demand sacrifices that make no logical sense, like requiring the warlock to speak only in questions during daylight hours, or to never eat food that grows underground. The pact operates according to far realm logic, which means it operates according to no logic at all from a mortal perspective. The corruption that spreads from far realm contact manifests in predictable stages, though the speed of progression varies wildly between individuals. Initial exposure typically produces strange dreams filled with imagery that could not exist in ordered reality. Places with impossible geography, events that violate causality, beings whose very existence represents a contradiction. These dreams feel more vivid and real than actual memories. They linger after waking, occupying mental space as though they were genuine experiences. As exposure continues, the boundary between dreams and waking life begins to erode. You see things from peripheral vision that vanish when looked at directly, but they are genuinely still there in your peripheral awareness. You hear voices speaking languages that never existed, yet fragments of their meaning slip into your understanding. Your thoughts begin incorporating concepts that your conscious mind rejects, but your subconscious accepts and builds upon. Eventually, severe or prolonged exposure causes complete mental fragmentation. Your personal history becomes fluid, shifting and changing without pattern. You remember events that never happened. You forget events that did occur. Your sense of individual identity dissolves and reforms in alien configurations. Some victims report perceiving themselves from outside their own bodies, experiencing multiple simultaneous versions of themselves, each equally real, each convinced of being the true self. Physical corruption follows its own terrible path. Flesh touched by far realm energy develops textures that shift and flow. Eyes relocate to new positions on the body. Limbs grow from impossible locations, while original limbs fade into non-existence. The changes follow no biological logic because they are not biological transformations. They are reality itself being rewritten at fundamental levels. The victim's body becoming a canvas displaying far realm nature. The locations where far realm energy has seeped into the ordered multiverse remain permanently tainted. These corrupted zones exhibit properties that should not exist. Gravity flows in wrong directions. Darkness glows with light that casts shadows on surfaces facing away from it. Stone breathes. Water flows upward while remaining liquid. Time itself behaves erratically, with some areas aging rapidly while others remain frozen in temporal stasis. You exist in a bubble of sanity, surrounded by infinite madness. The far realm presses against the barriers of reality constantly, eternally, not seeking to invade, but simply existing as it always has. Where it succeeds in touching ordered reality, where even the smallest crack allows its influence through, everything changes. Natural law bends and breaks. Minds shatter under impossible truths. Flesh warps into configurations that mock the very concept of biology. And the corruption does not fade with time. It persists. It spreads. It transforms everything it touches into something else, something that should not be, yet is. Section 2. Mind Flayers, the Gaiac Supremacy. The first time you encounter a mind flayer, your instincts scream warnings that your conscious mind struggles to articulate. This creature stands roughly your height, bipedal, and vaguely humanoid in posture. Yet every detail contradicts the familiar shape it mimics. Where a face should be, 4 purple tentacles writhe and coil with independent purpose. The head bulges grotesquely, swollen far beyond human proportions. The skull elongated and glistening with mucus-like moisture. The eyes, if you can bear to meet them, hold an intelligence so cold and alien that you immediately understand this being regards you the same way you might regard a cow destined for slaughter. Mind flayers call themselves Illithids, though most victims never learn this name before their minds are consumed. In their own language, they refer to other sentient beings as Gaiac, a word that translates roughly to inferior being or meat animal. This is not cruelty in any sense you would recognize. It is simple categorization. To an Illithid, the difference between you and cattle is merely a matter of brain quality and flavor. Your thoughts, your memories, your sense of self, all the intangible qualities that make you an individual. These are nothing more than seasoning to enhance the meal they plan to make of your consciousness. The act of feeding reveals the true horror of mind flayer nature. Those 4 facial tentacles are not decorative. They are not sensory organs in the way you understand the term. They are tools of consumption. When a mind flayer feeds, it wraps those tentacles around a victim's head, positioning them with disturbing precision. Then the tentacles burrow. They penetrate through eyes, through ears, through nasal passages, through any opening that provides access to the skull's interior. The victim remains conscious throughout this violation, paralyzed by psionic power, but fully aware as the tentacles reach the brain tissue and begin extracting it. But extraction is too simple a word for what occurs. The mind flayer does not merely consume gray matter. It absorbs the electrical impulses that define consciousness. It devours memories as they activate in the victim's dying moments. The terror, the pain, the desperate final thoughts. All of this enhances the feeding experience. Mind flayers prefer to consume the brains of intelligent beings, specifically because intelligence creates more complex neural patterns. The more sophisticated the mind, the more satisfying the meal. A mind flayer requires 1 humanoid brain every month to maintain its health and mental acuity. This is not preference. It is biological necessity. Without regular feeding on sapient brain matter, an Illithid begins to deteriorate physically and mentally. Its psionic abilities weaken. Its body grows frail. Eventually, starvation drives it to madness, even by Illithid standards, reducing it to a feral state where it attacks anything nearby in desperate hunger. The origin of the Illithid species remains shrouded in temporal paradox and far realm impossibility. According to their own records and racial memory, mind flayers once ruled a vast empire that spanned not just worlds, but entire planes of existence. What makes this claim particularly disturbing is that this Illithid empire existed in the future. Not in your future, but in a future that may never come to pass. A timeline where their dominion grew so absolute that they achieved effective control over reality itself. When this future empire reached its apex of power, something went catastrophically wrong. The exact nature of the catastrophe varies, depending on which source you consult. Some accounts speak of a rebellion by slave races who developed immunity to psionic control. Others mention a war against beings from the far realm itself, creatures so alien that even mind flayers found them incomprehensible. Still others whisper of internal conflict, of elder brains turning against each other in philosophical disputes that escalated to violence on a cosmic scale. Whatever the cause, the Illithid Empire fell. But before its complete destruction, the Mind Flayers enacted a desperate survival strategy based on what scholars have pieced together from fragmentary evidence. They sent their ancestors backward through time, not physically, but as a concept, as a species pattern that would embed itself in the past and grow forward again toward the future empire that spawned it. This creates a closed temporal loop that violates every principle of causality. The Mind Flayers exist because they sent themselves back to exist. They have no true origin point. They are their own ancestors and descendants simultaneously. This temporal paradox could explain why Mind Flayers feel so fundamentally wrong to encounter. They are not native to this timeline in any normal sense. They are refugees from a future that has not yet occurred, may never occur, and yet must occur because they already exist as evidence of its existence. Your mind cannot reconcile this impossibility, which might create that instinctive revulsion when you first see them. On some deep, subconscious level, you recognize that these creatures should not be, yet they are. The process by which Mind Flayers reproduce demonstrates their complete disregard for individual identity and their fundamentally alien understanding of life and death. Illithids are hermaphroditic, each individual possessing both male and female reproductive capabilities, though they do not reproduce through physical mating in any conventional sense. Instead, approximately once in their life cycle, a Mind Flayer enters a condition its kind calls the spawning. During this period, the Mind Flayer releases a mass of tiny larvae into the elder brain pool that serves as the center of every Illithid colony. These larvae, called tadpoles, swim in the brine solution where the elder brain floats, feeding on nutrients dissolved in the liquid and growing slowly over several years. Each tadpole measures only a few inches long initially, resembling a small, four-tentacled worm with a bulbous head. They possess no intelligence at this stage, only basic survival instincts that drive them to feed and grow. A single spawning can produce thousands of tadpoles. The vast majority will never progress beyond this larval stage. They serve as a living library for the elder brain, which consumes them gradually, absorbing whatever genetic memories and knowledge they carry. But a select few, chosen through criteria known only to the elder brain itself, receive a different destiny. They are selected for seramorphosis. Seramorphosis is the technical term for the transformation process that creates new mind flayers. The word itself comes from an ancient language, combining concepts of ceremony, change, and shape. But clinical terminology cannot convey the visceral horror of what seramorphosis actually entails. This is not metamorphosis as a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. This is infection, parasitism, and the complete erasure of one being's existence to create another. The process begins when elithids capture a suitable host. Humans prove ideal for this purpose, though elves, dwarves, Githyanki, and most other humanoid races can serve as viable hosts. The host must be adult, healthy, and possess sufficient intelligence to support an elithid mind once the transformation completes. Physical strength matters less than mental capacity. A brilliant scholar makes a better host than a powerful warrior, though mind flayers capture both as circumstances allow. Once secured and properly restrained, the host receives a tadpole. The elithids insert the larva directly into the victim's head through the ear canal, nose, or eye socket. The tadpole burrows immediately, driven by instinct toward the brain. The host remains conscious throughout this invasion, feeling the creature squirm through their skull, unable to prevent its progress, no matter how desperately they struggle. When the tadpole reaches the brain, it begins feeding on the cerebral tissue. But unlike an adult mind flayer consuming a meal, the tadpole does not simply devour and destroy. It integrates. It wraps itself around the brain stem and sends tendrils throughout the neural structure, gradually replacing the original tissue with its own metamorphosing substance. Over the course of approximately 7 days, the tadpole consumes the host's brain while simultaneously transforming into a new brain that occupies the same space. The host's personality, memories, and identity erode day by day as more of their brain tissue gets replaced. They experience this destruction from the inside, feeling their thoughts becoming alien, their memories distorting, their very sense of self dissolving like salt in water. By the 3rd or 4th day, they can no longer remember their own name without intense concentration. By the 5th day, they begin thinking in ways that feel foreign to them, cold and analytical, regarding their own body as a thing rather than as themselves. The physical transformation accompanies the mental destruction. The skull begins elongating, the bone becoming malleable as the growing elithid brain requires more space. The skin takes on a purplish hue and develops a constant moisture, a mucus coating that serves purposes in elithid biology that human science cannot fully explain. The facial features dissolve and reconfigure. Eyes become larger, rounder, and utterly inhuman in their dead, alien gaze. where the mouth and nose were, 4 tentacles sprout and grow, each developing its own muscular system and neural connections. By the 7th day, the transformation completes. The being that emerges from the restraints is no longer the person who was captured. That individual is dead in every meaningful sense. Their body survives, heavily modified but recognizable in overall shape. But the mind inhabiting that body is a lithid. It possesses fragments of the host's memories, residual knowledge absorbed during the consumption process. But these memories feel distant and unimportant. They are data points, nothing more. The new mind flayer has no emotional connection to the host's former life, no sense of having once been that person. Recent research, revealed by expeditions into mind flayer colonies, suggests that seromorphosis might not be as absolute as previously believed. In rare cases, strong-willed hosts have demonstrated some degree of resistance to complete mental erasure. These individuals retain fragments of their original personality even after the transformation completes. They might remember loved ones and feel some echo of former attachments. They might resist the illithid instinct to view other sapient beings as mere food. The elder brain, that vast consciousness that rules every illithid colony, regards such incomplete transformations as failures. A mind flayer that retains host personality traits is unreliable, potentially compromised in its loyalty to the collective. These aberrant illithids often face execution or exile, but some escape and exist as rogues. Mind flayers who operate independently of any colony, torn between their illithid nature and lingering human emotions. The elder brain itself represents perhaps the most disturbing aspect of mind flayer society. When an illithid dies, either through violence or the natural end of its century-long lifespan, its brain is removed and added to the elder brain pool. This communal consciousness floats in a brine-filled pit at the heart of every illithid colony, a massive accumulation of brain tissue that has grown and merged over centuries or even millennia. The elder brain is not simply the sum of its component minds. It is a Gestalt consciousness of terrifying power and intelligence. It possesses the accumulated knowledge and memories of every illithid who has ever contributed their brain to its mass. It can project its thoughts across vast distances, maintaining psychic contact with all mind flayers who have sworn allegiance to it. It serves as ruler, coordinator, and living archive for its colony, directing illithid activities with strategic brilliance that spans centuries of planning. Mind flayers do not possess individual free, while in the way other species understand the concept. They exist in constant telepathic communion with their elder brain, receiving guidance and directives that feel like their own thoughts. the elder brain does not command in the authoritarian sense. It suggests, it influences, it shapes the desires and goals of individual illithids so that they believe they act according to their own preferences, while actually serving the colony's collective interests. Only by severing connection to an elder brain can a mind flayer develop true independence. This severance occurs rarely and usually through traumatic circumstances. An illithid separated from its colony for extended periods might find the elder brain's influence fading, or an elder brain might be destroyed, suddenly releasing all mind flayers bonded to it into terrifying freedom. These newly independent illithids often struggle with their condition, having never learned to make truly autonomous decisions. The psionic abilities that mind flayers wield represent their greatest advantage over other species. Every illithid possesses powerful telepathic capabilities from the moment ceremorphosis completes. They communicate through direct mind-to-mind contact, sharing thoughts and concepts at speeds far exceeding verbal language. This telepathy extends to other species, allowing mind flayers to read surface thoughts, project mental images, and establish rudimentary communication with beings who do not speak their language. But mind flayer psionics extend far beyond simple telepathy. They can dominate the minds of other creatures, overriding free will and turning victims into temporary puppets. They can blast opponents with pure psychic energy, attacks that bypass physical defenses entirely and strike directly at consciousness itself. They can create illusions so perfect that they fool all senses simultaneously. They can erase memories, implant false ones, or drive victims to madness with carefully constructed mental assaults. The source of these psionic abilities connects directly to the far realm. Mind flayers are aberrations, creatures whose fundamental nature derives from that realm of impossible chaos beyond ordered reality. Their brains operate according to principles that differ from biological neural networks. They process information through structures that should not function according to known physics, yet do function with terrifying efficiency. This gives them access to mental powers that other species can only achieve through intense training or magical enhancement, if they can achieve them at all. Illithid society operates on principles of ruthless pragmatism and absolute hierarchy. The elder brain rules without question. Below it, specialized mind flayers occupy various roles within the colony. Warrior flayers focus on combat and colony defense. Scholar flayers pursue research and experimentation. Explorer flayers venture out to capture new hosts and gather intelligence on potential threats and opportunities. Beneath the mind flayers themselves exist the thralls, dominated slaves from dozens of different species. These unfortunate beings serve as laborers, guards, and living tools. The Illithids maintain constant psionic control over their thralls, ensuring absolute obedience. Some slaves retain enough awareness to understand their enslavement and suffer from the knowledge that they cannot resist. Others have been mind-wiped so thoroughly that they serve with blank-faced contentment, their original personalities completely erased. The Githyanki and Githzerai, those two related but ideologically opposed races, exist as constant thorns in mind flayer ambitions. These humanoids descend from slaves who successfully rebelled against Illithid masters countless generations ago. They remember their enslavement in racial memory and cultural teaching. They have built entire civilizations around the core principle of destroying mind flayers wherever they are found. Githyanki raiders specifically seek out Illithid colonies, attacking with coordinated military precision and taking no prisoners. They kill every mind flayer they encounter and destroy elder brains with particular satisfaction, viewing this as the highest form of justice. The eternal war between Gith and Illithid rages across planes and worlds, a conflict without possibility of peace or compromise. For both sides seek nothing less than the complete eradication of the other. You will likely never face a mind flayer directly. Their colonies exist in the deep places, far beneath civilized lands, where light never reaches and few dare to venture. But if you do encounter an Illithid, know that your thoughts betray you before you can act on them. It reads your intentions as you form them. It knows your fears because it experiences them directly from your mind. It understands your tactics because it perceives your strategic thinking in real time. Fighting a mind flayer means fighting an opponent who knows everything you plan to do before you do it, who strikes at your consciousness rather than your flesh, who regards your death as nothing more than the preparation of its next meal. Section 3. Beholders' dreams made flesh. Every nightmare you have ever experienced dissolved upon waking. The monster chasing you faded back into non-existence. The impossible architecture collapsed into forgotten fragments. The terror that gripped you released its hold as consciousness returned and rational thought reasserted itself. Dreams, no matter how vivid, remain phantoms without substance. They cannot follow you into the waking world. They cannot make themselves real through sheer force of imagination, unless you are a beholder. For these creatures, the boundary between dream and reality does not exist. A beholder resembles nothing else that swims, crawls, walks, or flies through any natural ecosystem. Picture a sphere of leathery flesh, roughly 8 to 10 feet in diameter, hovering in midair through no visible means of propulsion. The surface of this orb features mottled coloration, usually in shades of brown, gray, or sickly green, though variations exist in patterns as unique as fingerprints. The texture looks tough and chitinous, yet also strangely organic, as though someone wrapped muscle tissue around a ball and let it calcify into armor. But the body sphere is merely the foundation for true horror. From the front of this floating mass, a single enormous eye dominates, easily 3 feet across, with a pupil that dilates and contracts independently of surrounding light levels. This central eye tracks movement with unnerving precision, the gaze conveying intelligence that feels wrong in ways you struggle to articulate. Below the central eye, a massive mouth opens to reveal rows of sharp, inward curving teeth designed to grip and tear. The mouth is wide enough to bite a human torso in half with a single chomp, and the beholder can and will do exactly that when hunger or rage moves it to physical violence. Sprouting from the top of the sphere, arranged in a crown-like formation, 10 eye stalks writhe and coil with serpentine grace. Each eye stalk measures several feet long and terminates in a smaller eye. Though smaller is relative, when each of these secondary organs still measures several inches across. The eye stalks move independently, swiveling and rotating to track different targets simultaneously. A beholder can observe 10 separate threats at once, maintaining perfect awareness of everything in its vicinity. You cannot flank a creature that sees in all directions at the same time. The origins of beholders defy every principle of natural selection and evolutionary biology. These creatures did not evolve from simpler forms. They were not created by gods or spawned by demons. Based on what scholars have documented, they appear to be manifestations from the far realm, or more precisely, from the intersection between far realm madness and the power of solipsistic belief made manifest. A beholder exists because it believes itself to be real. Its belief is so absolute, so utterly convinced of its own existence and supremacy, that reality has no choice but to accommodate it. This fundamental nature shapes everything about how beholders interact with the world. Each one is convinced with unshakable certainty that it represents the perfect form of life. Its specific arrangement of eye stalks, the exact shade of its hide, the particular pattern of its teeth, these are not merely its features. They are the objectively correct features that all beings should possess. Any deviation from this perfection is not simply different. It is wrong, inferior, an insult to the natural order that must be corrected or destroyed. This means that every beholder views every other beholder as a hideous abomination. When two beholders encounter each other, they do not see fellow members of their species. They see grotesque mockeries of the perfect form. One might have eye stalks that are slightly too long. The other might have teeth arranged at minutely different angles. These tiny variations, differences that other species would barely notice, represent fundamental flaws that cannot be tolerated. Beholders who meet almost invariably fight to the death, each convinced it is purging the world of a twisted aberration. The reproduction method of beholders reflects their solipsistic nature in the most disturbing way possible. Beholders do not mate. They do not seek partners or engage in any form of courtship. Instead, they dream. And when a beholder dreams of another beholder, that dream becomes real. This process occurs entirely without the parent beholder's conscious intent or awareness. During sleep, which is rare for beholders, the creature's mind remains fully active, often dreaming of itself or imagined variations. On extremely rare occasions, when a beholder dreams of another beholder, the act creates a warp in reality, from which a new, fully formed beholder emerges. The dreamed beholder manifests somewhere in the vicinity of the sleeping parent. The newborn appears fully formed and fully aware, possessing its own personality and memories, despite having never actually lived before this moment. The dreamed beholder believes itself to have always existed. It has no knowledge of being dreamed into being. It considers itself independent and unique, the perfect form of life, just as all beholders do. The parent beholder, upon waking and discovering this offspring, does not recognize it as its creation. It sees only an intruder, another grotesque deviation from perfection that has dared to enter its territory. The offspring is almost always slightly different from the parent, with minor variations in coloration, eye arrangement, or other features. To the parent beholder, these differences are utterly intolerable. Most dream-spawned beholders must flee immediately upon manifestation or face destruction by the very creature that inadvertently created them. This reproductive method ensures that beholders can never form lasting societies or cooperative groups. Their extreme xenophobia and absolute conviction in their own perfection makes peaceful coexistence impossible. Each beholder dwells alone in its chosen lair, defending its territory with paranoid vigilance against all intruders, especially other beholders. The species persists not through cooperative breeding, but through the involuntary dream spawning that occurs whenever these creatures sleep. The abilities that beholders wield make them among the most dangerous creatures in existence. Each of the 10 smaller eyes possesses a different magical capability, beams of energy that the beholder can project at will. These eye rays do not function like spells in the conventional sense. The beholder does not cast them through incantations or ritual. It simply looks at a target and wills destruction, and reality obeys. The specific powers vary slightly between individual beholders, but that certain abilities appear consistently across the species. One eye stalk fires a charm ray that overwhelms the target's will, forcing them to regard the beholder as a trusted ally. Another projects a paralyzing ray that freezes victims in place while leaving them conscious and aware. A third emits a fear ray that sends targets fleeing in mindless terror. A fourth shoots a slowing ray that drastically reduces the target's movement and reaction speed. Other eye stalks produce even more devastating effects. An enervation ray drains life force directly, dealing significant necrotic damage. A telekinetic ray lifts objects or creatures and hurls them with tremendous force, or manipulates them with fine precision. A sleep ray plunges targets into instant unconsciousness. A petrification ray transforms flesh into stone over the course of 2 rounds. A disintegration ray unravels matter at a molecular level, reducing targets to fine dust. And a death ray simply kills, dealing massive necrotic damage that can instantly end life. A beholder can fire up to 3 of these eye rays per round of combat, selecting different targets for each beam. The rays are chosen randomly from among the 10 available options, with the beholder re-rolling any duplicates. This gives it incredible tactical flexibility. It can paralyze the warrior rushing toward it, disintegrate the wizard preparing a spell, and turn the rogue sneaking behind it to stone, all in the span of a few seconds. No other creature possesses such diverse offensive capabilities, combined with the awareness to deploy them against multiple threats simultaneously. But the beholder's most powerful ability comes from its central eye. This huge organ projects an anti-magic cone, an invisible beam that extends outward in a straight line for 150 feet. Within this cone, magic ceases to function. Spells unravel. Magical items become mundane. Supernatural abilities fail. Even the magic that allows other creatures to exist, such as the animating force in undead, or the binding that holds elementals in physical form, temporarily suspends within the anti-magic field. The anti-magic cone serves as both weapon and defense. A beholder can shut down enemy spellcasters by simply looking at them, rendering wizards and clerics helpless. It can negate magical weapons and armor, reducing heavily equipped warriors to unprotected targets. At the start of each of its turns, the beholder decides which way the cone faces and whether the cone is active. This creates interesting tactical considerations. The area works against the beholder's own eye rays, meaning it must choose whether to suppress magic with its central eye or attack with its eye stalks, as it cannot do both to the same target simultaneously. Skilled beholders learn to manipulate this limitation with terrifying efficiency. They open their central eye briefly to project the anti-magic cone at approaching enemies, then close it to fire eye rays at distant targets outside the cone's area. They position themselves so the anti-magic cone covers some threats while their eye stalks target others. They use architecture and terrain to their advantage, creating situations where opponents must choose between cover from eye rays or cover from the anti-magic effect. Unable to achieve both simultaneously, the intelligence driving these tactical decisions cannot be overstated. Beholders possess genius-level intellect, minds that process information and formulate strategies at speeds far exceeding human capability. They are not merely cunning predators, operating on enhanced instinct. They are brilliant tacticians who study their enemies, identify weaknesses, and exploit those weaknesses with ruthless precision. A beholder that has time to prepare for combat becomes nearly unbeatable, having anticipated every possible approach and created countermeasures for each one. This intelligence extends beyond combat applications. Beholders are scholars and collectors of knowledge, though their extreme xenophobia limits their ability to share or collaborate. Many beholders spend centuries accumulating information about subjects that fascinate them. One might become an expert on planar cosmology, mapping the relationships between different dimensions with obsessive precision. Another might study arcane theory, not to cast spells, but to better understand how magic works, and therefore how to destroy it more efficiently. A third might collect art and treasure, evaluating each piece according to aesthetic standards comprehensible only to itself. The layers that beholders construct reflect both their intelligence and their paranoia. These creatures prefer to dwell in elaborate cave systems or ancient ruins that they modify extensively to suit their needs. They carve passages at odd angles, creating three-dimensional mazes that confuse intruders while remaining perfectly navigable to the beholder's alien spatial reasoning. They install traps of diabolical complexity, mechanisms that trigger in sequences designed to herd victims into kill zones. They position their treasure and possessions to serve as bait, luring greedy adventurers into exposed positions where eye rays can target them without obstruction. A beholder's paranoia extends to preparing for threats, both real and imagined. It assumes that enemies constantly plot its destruction, which is often accurate given how many creatures and organizations would celebrate a beholder's death. It develops contingency plans for every scenario it can conceive, from direct assault by surface dwellers to betrayal by its own minions, to attacks by other beholders, to interventions by gods. Some of these preparations are rational and practical. Others are elaborate defenses against threats that exist only in the beholder's fevered imagination. But the beholder makes no distinction between likely and unlikely dangers. It prepares for everything with equal intensity. Beholders sometimes take minions, lesser creatures that serve their purposes. But these are never true allies or companions. They are tools, living instruments to be used and discarded. The beholder maintains control through fear and power, demonstrating its devastating capabilities to ensure obedience. Minions who fail to perform adequately face disintegration or petrification. Their remains left on display as warnings to others. Even loyal servants who serve well for years can be destroyed on a whim if the beholder becomes suspicious of their intentions or simply grows tired of their presence. You exist in a world where dreams dissolve upon waking and imagination cannot alter the fundamental nature of things. But beholders prove that this is not a universal truth. They are dreams that refuse to end. They are nightmares granted permanent existence. And they float through the deep places of the world, each one absolutely convinced of its own perfection. Each one prepared to destroy anything that fails to meet its impossible standards. Should you encounter one, know that you face a creature whose belief in itself is so powerful that it warps reality, whose paranoia has prepared for your every tactic, whose genius intellect exceeds your own, and whose devastating magical arsenal can strike you down before you complete a single action. In its presence, you may find that belief is not entirely unfounded. Section 4. Aboleths the memory of water. Water covers most of the world's surface, vast oceans, and deep lakes that remain largely unexplored by surface civilizations. You build your cities on land and venture onto the waves in ships, but the true depths remain alien to you. Miles below the surface, where pressure would crush your body instantly and darkness is absolute, civilizations existed long before yours. They thrived when your ancestors were still primitive creatures, crawling from tidal pools. They built empires when the gods themselves were young, and they remember everything. The aboleth resembles nothing that evolved naturally in any aquatic ecosystem. Picture an eel-like body stretching 20 feet or more in length, as thick through the middle as a horse's barrel. The skin glistens with a thick mucus coating that serves purposes both mundane and horrifying, purposes you will come to understand with mounting dread. The coloration varies between individuals, ranging from gray-green to purple-brown, often with mottled patterns that help them blend with deep water environments. 4 tentacles extend from positions around the creature's head, each measuring 6 to 8 feet long and lined with sensory organs that detect the slightest disturbance in water currents. These tentacles are not clumsy appendages. They move with precise control, capable of delicate manipulation or crushing strength as circumstances require. The mouth sits at the front of the body, a lamprey-like opening filled with rings of inward-facing teeth designed to grip prey and prevent escape. But the most disturbing feature is the eyes. 3 of them arranged in a triangular formation on the creature's face, each one unnaturally intelligent and ancient beyond comprehension. When an aboleth looks at you, those eyes convey awareness that predates your entire species. They have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They remember events from before recorded history began. And they judge you as you might judge an insect, something barely worthy of notice, except as a potential tool or food source. The aboleths claim to be older than the gods themselves. This is not boastful exaggeration or religious mythology. According to their racial memory, which extends back without interruption to the dawn of time, aboleths existed in the primordial oceans before divine beings achieved consciousness and power. They remember a world without deities, a time when only elemental forces and ancient aberrations shaped reality. When the gods appeared, rising to power through mechanisms the aboleths observed, but claim not to fully understand, these ancient creatures viewed the development with concern. Divine beings began imposing order on chaos, establishing rules and natural laws where none had existed before. They created mortal races to worship them, populating the world with humans, elves, dwarves, and countless other species. The gods presented themselves as eternal and all-powerful, fundamental aspects of reality itself. But the aboleths knew better. They had lived before the gods arose. They had seen the world function without divine intervention. They knew with absolute certainty, based on direct observation, that deities were not eternal creators, but relatively recent phenomena in the grand timeline of existence. This knowledge became the foundation of aboleth culture and their eternal opposition to divine influence. Whether the aboleth's claims about predating the gods are literally true or represent a racial delusion remains a matter of theological debate among surface scholars. What is verifiable is that aboleths genuinely believe this history, and their entire civilization is built around it. The gods, according to aboleth belief, recognized these ancient creatures as threats to their authority. Mortals who learned that gods had not always existed might question divine supremacy. Civilizations that discovered the truth about their deity's origins might reject worship entirely. This interpretation suggests the gods worked to suppress this knowledge, encouraging their followers to hunt aboleths and spreading stories painting these creatures as evil aberrations, rather than as ancient witnesses to cosmic history. The aboleths withdrew, but they did not forget. They never forget. Racial memory, the ability to access the experiences and knowledge of all their ancestors, defines aboleth existence at fundamental levels. When an aboleth is born, it does not start as a blank slate requiring education. It emerges already possessing the accumulated memories of its entire lineage, stretching back thousands of years. It remembers events it never personally witnessed. It knows things it never personally learned. The entire history of its species exists within its mind from the moment of birth. This racial memory operates differently from inherited instinct. An aboleth does not simply know that certain prey species are edible or that certain depths are safer than others. It remembers the specific day centuries ago when one of its ancestors first discovered that particular prey. It recalls the exact series of events that led to establishing that safe depth as a lair location. The memories are not vague impressions. They are vivid, detailed recollections, as clear as though the current aboleth personally experienced them. The implications of this ability are staggering. An aboleth possesses knowledge accumulated over millennia without any need for books, libraries, or historical records. It can draw upon the strategic thinking of hundreds of ancestor tacticians when planning an attack. It knows every secret its species has ever learned, every spell its ancestors ever witnessed, every weakness in every enemy race that any aboleth has ever discovered. This makes them extraordinarily dangerous opponents. You cannot surprise an aboleth with tactics that worked against its kind in the past. It remembers every successful strategy ever used against its species and has had centuries to develop countermeasures. The mucus that coats an aboleth's body serves as one of its most insidious weapons. This is not ordinary slime. It is a transformative substance imbued with the aboleth's alien biology. When this mucus makes contact with an air-breathing creature's skin, it begins a horrible process of physiological change. The mucus absorbs into the victim's tissue, traveling through the bloodstream and concentrating in the lungs. Over the course of several hours, the victim's respiratory system undergoes forced adaptation. The lungs begin to function more like gills, extracting oxygen from water rather than air. This sounds like it might be beneficial, granting the ability to breathe underwater. But the transformation is not additive. It is replacement. As the victim becomes capable of breathing water, they simultaneously lose the ability to breathe air. The lungs still draw breath reflexively, but air no longer provides oxygen. The victim begins to suffocate while standing in open atmosphere. Panic sets in as they gasp desperately, pulling air into lungs that cannot process it. The only relief comes from submerging in water, where their transformed respiratory system can extract the oxygen they need to survive. This transformation serves the aboleth's purposes perfectly. The victim becomes dependent on remaining underwater, unable to leave the aquatic environment without suffocating. They must stay near the aboleth that caused their transformation. They become prisoners of their own biology, forced into servitude by the simple need to breathe. The aboleth gains a slave who cannot escape, cannot seek help from surface dwellers, and will obey any command rather than face the agony of slow suffocation. The mucus transformation is not permanent on its own, fading after several days if the victim receives no additional exposure. But aboleths ensure their slaves receive regular contact with mucus-coated tentacles, refreshing the transformation and maintaining the respiratory dependency. Slaves who have served for years sometimes forget they were ever capable of breathing air. Their original life on the surface becomes a distant memory, replaced by the eternal underwater existence the aboleth imposes. Aboleths possess powerful psionic abilities that rival those of mind flayers. They communicate through pure telepathy, projecting thoughts directly into the minds of other creatures. Unlike mind flayer telepathy, which feels like an invasion, aboleth mental contact often presents itself as the victim's own thoughts. The aboleth does not command. It suggests. It plants ideas that feel like they originated within the victim's own mind. This subtle approach makes aboleth mental domination particularly insidious. A victim under aboleth control may not realize they are being controlled. They believe they are acting according to their own free will, pursuing goals they genuinely want to achieve. They do not experience the sensation of being puppeted or overridden. They simply find themselves agreeing with the aboleth's perspective, finding its arguments logical and its commands reasonable. The enslavement can be further enhanced through direct physical contact with the aboleth's tentacles. A strike from these appendages carries a psychic payload that overwhelms the victim's will. This is more forceful than the subtle mental suggestions, a direct assault on consciousness that breaks down resistance and establishes absolute control. Victims who suffer tentacle strikes often become permanent thralls, their personalities suppressed beneath layers of aboleth programming. Aboleth layers exist in the deepest parts of oceans and lakes, often in underwater cave systems that extend for miles. These are not simple animal dens. They are elaborate complexes built over centuries, demonstrating architectural sophistication that rivals surface civilizations. The aboleths carve passages through solid rock, using techniques unknown to surface species. They create chambers for specific purposes, including slave pens, treasure vaults, breeding pools, and meditation grottos, where individual aboleths access deep racial memories. The water within an aboleth's lair takes on strange properties. The creature can manipulate currents with perfect precision, creating zones of stillness or violent vortexes as needed. It can cloud the water to obscure vision or clear it to crystalline transparency. It can adjust temperature, pressure, and even the chemical composition of the water within its territory. Intruders entering an aboleth's lair find themselves in an environment completely under the creature's control, where every aspect of the surroundings can be weaponized against them. Aboleths collect slaves from every species they encounter. These thralls serve countless purposes within the underwater civilization. Some work as laborers, mining precious materials or constructing new chambers. Others serve as soldiers, defending the lair against intruders. Still others become living libraries, their minds filled with specific knowledge the aboleth found useful. Some particularly valued slaves are kept for decades, their entire lives spent in service to the aboleth that claimed them. Aboleth society operates on principles of isolated dominance rather than cooperation. Each individual aboleth claims a territory and rules it absolutely. They do not form governments or establish hierarchies among themselves. When two aboleth's territories overlap, they negotiate boundaries through telepathic communication, each assessing the other's power and deciding whether conflict would be worthwhile. Usually, the weaker aboleth withdraws to seek territory elsewhere. Occasionally, both judge themselves equal and engage in battles that devastate entire regions of the seafloor. Despite their isolation, aboleths maintain awareness of each other through their racial memory. When one aboleth discovers something significant, that knowledge enters the species' collective memory and becomes available to all aboleths of the next generation. This creates a form of distributed intelligence where individual aboleths function independently, but the species as a whole accumulates knowledge continuously across all members. Every discovery, every experiment, every observation made by any aboleth eventually benefits the entire species. The ultimate goal of aboleth civilization involves nothing less than the overthrow of divine authority and the establishment of their own dominion over all intelligent species. They work toward this goal with patience measured in centuries. They establish cults among surface dwellers, manipulating mortals into worshiping the ancient aboleths instead of the gods. They infiltrate societies by enslaving key individuals and using them as puppets. They gather information about weaknesses in surface civilizations, storing that knowledge in racial memory for future use. The aboleths believe that eventually, given enough time, the gods will fade. Divine beings draw power from worship. If that worship can be redirected, if mortals can be convinced to abandon their deities in favor of the ancient ones who existed before divinity, the gods will weaken. And when the gods are weak, the aboleths will reclaim the world they believe is rightfully theirs. they will emerge from the depths and establish open dominion over all lands and seas. And the reign of gods will be remembered only in a Boleth racial memory, as a brief, aberrant period in the cosmic timeline. You will likely never see an Aboleth in its natural environment. The depths they inhabit are inaccessible to surface dwellers without magic. And even with magic, the journey is extraordinarily dangerous. But Aboleth influence reaches far beyond their underwater lairs. That strange cult operating in your city might serve masters dwelling miles below the ocean's surface. That madman raving about ancient beings older than gods might have touched genuine Aboleth knowledge. That unexplained drowning, where the victim's lungs were filled with water despite being found on dry land, might have been an escaped slave who could no longer breathe air. The Aboleths remember everything, see everything eventually through their network of thralls and spies, and plan for eventualities measured in centuries. They are patient, they are ancient, and they are waiting. Section 5. The Daelker Aberrant's Eternal Wound. The world of Aberrant operates according to principles that differ subtly from other campaign settings. The gods do not walk among mortals or manifest avatars to champion their causes. Divine magic flows not from personal deities, but from abstract concepts of faith itself. The planes orbit the material world in predictable cycles, drawing close and then receding like cosmic tides. And 9,000 years ago, one of those planes drew so close that the barrier between worlds grew thin enough to pierce. What came through that breach changed Aberrant forever. Zoriat, the realm of madness, exists as Aberrant's expression of the far realm's infinite chaos. This plane embodies impossibility made manifest, a dimension where natural laws dissolve into contradiction and insanity. Time flows in all directions simultaneously. Space folds back on itself in configurations that hurt to contemplate. Entities dwell there, whose existence violates every principle of coherent reality. And ruling over portions of this maddening realm, the Daelker lords achieved consciousness and power through mechanisms that mortal minds cannot comprehend. The Daelker are not native to Zoriat in the way creatures are native to their home environments. Based on what scholars have pieced together from surviving records, they came from somewhere even further beyond, some source dimension that exists at an even greater remove from ordered reality. They arrived in Zoriat and claimed dominion over its chaos. Each Daelker lord establishing territory and beginning the long work of creation according to their own twisted visions. They shaped the formless madness of Zoriat into new configurations, breeding creatures and designing horrors that would serve as soldiers and slaves. Belashra, the Lord of Eyes, concerns himself with vision in all its forms. not merely physical sight, but perception itself, the act of observing and being observed. His realm in Zoriat consists of infinite watching, endless eyes arranged in geometric patterns that extend forever in all directions. Every surface is an eye. Every eye watches something different. Some observe the present moment. Others gaze into distant past or possible futures. Still others perceive realities that do not exist, but might exist if certain conditions were met. Balashra's fascination with eyes drives his creative efforts. He grafts eyes onto creatures that never possessed them. He removes eyes from their original owners and transplants them into new hosts where they continue seeing despite the transfer. He breeds organisms whose entire bodies consist of ocular tissue, living spheres of vision that float through Zoriat, recording everything they observe. His ultimate goal, as far as mortal scholars can interpret his alien motivations, involves achieving perfect awareness, knowing everything that can be known through the act of seeing it all simultaneously. The creatures Balashra created reflect his obsession. Some researchers theorize that beholders, those reality-warping spheres of eyes and madness, may have originated with his experiments, or at least been influenced by his work, though this connection remains unconfirmed. Eye tyrants serve him willingly, recognizing a kindred spirit in this lord who values vision above all else. Lesser aberrations like Nothics, those one-eyed devolved wizards, bear the mark of his aesthetic, and unique horrors that exist nowhere outside Zoriat carry his signature in their multiple, misplaced, or impossibly arranged eyes. Dirn the Corruptor, sometimes called the Corruptor of Flesh, works with organic matter as a sculptor works with clay. This Daelker lord views bodies not as sacred vessels or natural forms, but as raw material to be reshaped according to superior design. Dirn takes humanoids and transforms them into Dalgons, four-armed aberrations whose tentacle mouths feed on psychic energy. Dirn merges multiple beings into single Dalgrim forms, twisted creatures that retain fragmented memories from all their component parts and suffer constant confusion about their own identity. The philosophy underlying Dirn's transformations centers on the concept of improvement through corruption. In Dirn's perception, natural biological forms are inefficient and limited. They possess only 2 arms when 4 would be more useful. They rely on single brains when distributed neural networks would provide redundancy. They reproduce slowly through individual births when mass production through forced metamorphosis could create armies in days. Dirn seeks to perfect organic life by stripping away the restrictions of natural evolution and replacing them with intentional design. Other Daelker lords exist, though their names and natures remain less documented. Orlask, the master of stone, blurs the boundary between living flesh and inanimate mineral. Valara crafts diseases and plagues, biological weapons that spread suffering through populations. Kiazin breeds insects and vermin, creating hive minds and swarm intelligences. Each Daelker lord pursues obsessions that define their identity and drive their creative efforts. Each one represents a different aspect of far realm madness, given focus and purpose. The exact number of Daelker lords remains uncertain. Some sources claim 13 exist in total, a number with symbolic significance in various mystical traditions. Others suggest the count might be higher, with additional lords dwelling in regions of Zoriat that have never made contact with Aberrant. Still others theorize that the number fluctuates, with Daelker lords occasionally destroying each other or spawning new lords through processes incomprehensible to mortal understanding. 9,000 years ago, Zoriat drew close to Aberrant in its orbital cycle. The barrier between planes thinned to near transparency, and the Daelker lords, observing this new world through whatever senses they possess, decided to extend their dominion beyond Zoriat's borders. They gathered their created aberrations, their bred horrors, their shaped weapons of living madness, and they opened gates. The invasion began in the region that would later be called the Shadow Marches, a vast wetland on Aberrant's western coast. The Daelker did not arrive as conventional armies marching in formation. They manifested as impossibilities given physical form, stepping through reality tiers, accompanied by countless aberrations. Dalgaunts and Dalgrims emerged in coordinated waves. Mind flayers followed, either allied with the Daelker or opportunistically exploiting the chaos. Beholders drifted through the portals, their alien nature finding comfort in the reality distortions surrounding the invasion sites. The initial attacks devastated the region's inhabitants. The Orcish communities dwelling in the Shadow Marches had no frame of reference for what they faced. These were not soldiers who could be fought with conventional tactics. These were entities that violated the fundamental rules governing reality. Warriors who charged aberration forces found their weapons passing harmlessly through enemies that existed partially in other dimensions. Shamans who called upon primal spirits for aid discovered their magic behaving erratically near the Daelker, spells twisting into unintended effects, or simply failing as local reality became too corrupted to sustain ordered supernatural forces. The Daelker established beachheads and began the work they had perfected in Zoriat, transforming everything they touched. Captured orcs underwent forced ceramorphosis, their bodies reshaped into new aberrations designed to thrive in Aberrant's environment. The land itself changed, geology becoming fluid, plants developing eyes and mouths, water flowing upward and stone melting into putty. The Daelkyr were not simply conquering territory. They were remaking it, transforming Aberrant into an extension of Xoriat, where their aberrations would feel at home, and ordered life would struggle to survive. The druids of the gatekeepers recognized the existential threat. This circle of primal spellcasters, primarily composed of orcs who had devoted themselves to preserving natural balance, understood that the Daelkyr invasion threatened more than just territory or lives. It threatened the fundamental integrity of Aberrant itself. If the corruption spread unchecked, the entire world might gradually transform into a reflection of Xoriat's madness. Reality would unravel. Natural law would collapse. Everything would dissolve into chaos. The gatekeepers marshaled every resource they could gather. They called upon ancient pacts with nature spirits and elemental forces. They forged alliances with other druid circles, convincing them to join the defense despite the terrible risks. They developed new magic specifically designed to counter Daelkyr corruption, rituals that could seal dimensional breaches and bind aberrations. And they prepared themselves for a war that would span centuries and cost countless lives. The conflict that followed became known as the Daelkyr War. Though calling it a war undersells the cosmic significance of what occurred. This was not a struggle between nations or even between planes. This was a battle between ordered reality and consuming chaos, between the structured world that evolution and divine influence had created, and the maddening impossibility that the Daelkyr represented. Every battle was existential. Every victory was temporary. Every defeat risked cascading into total collapse. The gatekeepers could not destroy the Daelkyr lords. These beings existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Killing their physical manifestations in Aberrant would merely force them back to Xoriat, where they would wait for another opportunity to invade. The druids needed something more permanent, a solution that would bind the Daelkyr and prevent their return even after Xoriat drew close to Aberrant again in future cycles. After decades of research and experimentation, the gatekeepers developed binding rituals of unprecedented complexity. These magical workings would trap individual Daelkyr lords in dimensional prisons, pocket spaces that existed between planes, where the prisoners could neither escape nor exert influence over Aberrant. The rituals required enormous power to cast and maintain. They demanded sacrifices measured in lives rather than material components, and they needed to be anchored to the fundamental structure of reality itself, woven so deeply into the fabric of the world that removing them would damage creation. One by one, the gatekeepers lured Daelkyr lords into traps and enacted their binding rituals. Belashra was sealed away, along with all his infinite watching eyes. Deern the Corruptor was imprisoned, separated from the flesh gardens and transformation chambers where he practiced his art. The other Daelker lords suffered similar fates, trapped in isolation where their power could not touch the material world. The process took over a century and cost thousands of gatekeeper lives. But eventually, all the Daelker who had physically manifested in Aberrant were bound. With their masters imprisoned, the Aberration armies lost coordination and purpose. Some fought on mindlessly, following final orders until they were destroyed. Others fled into the depths of Khyber, the underworld beneath Aberrant's surface, where they established colonies that persist to the present day. Still others simply stopped functioning, their biology too dependent on Daelker influence to survive independently. The immediate threat passed. The invasion was contained, but the scars remained. The region where the Daelker first emerged never fully recovered. The shadow marches remain tainted to this day, 9,000 years after the invasion began. Reality is thinner there. Aberrations breed more easily. Magic behaves unpredictably. Travelers report seeing impossible things from the corners of their eyes, experiencing brief moments of temporal displacement, feeling watched by geometries. The land remembers what was done to it, and that memory refuses to fade. Beneath the surface, in the endless tunnels and caverns of Khyber, Aberration civilizations thrive. Mind flayer colonies extend their influence through underground trade and psionics. Beholder layers dot the deepest reaches, each one ruled by a paranoid tyrant convinced of its own perfection. Dalgaunts and Dalgrims form communities built around memories of the Daelker masters. They still serve despite those masters being imprisoned. These subterranean aberrations occasionally raid surface settlements, emerging from unexpected locations to capture victims for seramorphosis, or simply to spread chaos in service to imprisoned lords who may not even be aware of their servants' activities. The seals binding the Daelker lords remain intact, but they are not permanent. The gatekeepers who created them understood that nothing lasts forever. The bindings require maintenance, rituals performed at regular intervals to reinforce the dimensional prisons. As the original gatekeepers died, they passed this knowledge to successors who continue the work today. But institutional memory fades over millennia. The modern gatekeepers know the rituals, but understand them less completely than their predecessors. They perform the maintenance correctly, but if anything ever went seriously wrong, they might lack the knowledge to fix it. Worse, the Daelker themselves have not remained idle in their prisons. They exist partially outside normal time, which could grant them subjective eternities to study their confinement and search for weaknesses. They cannot break free through direct force, but they can influence their still free servants, coordinating aberration activities across Aberrant despite being cut off from direct communication. Cults dedicated to the Daelker exist throughout Aberrant, hidden in plain sight. These organizations worship the imprisoned lords as gods, believing that the Daelker represent evolution's ultimate destination. They work to undermine the gatekeeper seals, researching ways to free their masters, or at least create small breaches that would allow Daelker influence to reach the material world again. Some cultists are knowing participants in this agenda. Others are manipulated pawns, pursuing goals they believe are unrelated while actually serving Daelker purposes. The cycle of Zoriat guarantees that the threat will intensify. This plane orbits Aberrant on a schedule measured in thousands of years. It is currently distant, far from the material world, which prevents easy transit between dimensions. But it will draw close again eventually. And when it does, the Daelker will sense their opportunity. They will push against their bindings with renewed vigor. They will coordinate their servants to attack the seals from outside, while they strain against them from within. And if even one Daelker lord breaks free, the invasion could begin again. You exist in a world where ancient horrors sleep in dimensional prisons, waiting for their chance to return. The Daelker lords dream their alien dreams and plan their inevitable escape. Their aberration servants breed and spread in the darkness beneath your feet. Their cults infiltrate your cities and institutions, working toward goals you cannot perceive until too late. The scars from an invasion 9,000 years ago still bleed corruption into reality. And the cycle that brought that invasion will bring it again. The far realm's influence does not limit itself to distant places and ancient history. It surrounds you constantly, pressing against the barriers of reality, seeking any crack through which to seep. Mind flayers plot in their underground cities, their elder brains coordinating schemes that span centuries. Beholders float through forgotten ruins, convinced of their own perfection, and prepared to destroy anything that deviates from their impossible standards. A boleths scheme in oceanic depths, remembering everything and waiting patiently for gods to fade, so they can reclaim what they believe is rightfully theirs. Daelker lords strain against their bindings, counting down the eons until Zoriat draws close enough to grant them leverage. All of them are aspects of the same fundamental threat, manifestations of chaos, attempting to unmake the order that allows your existence. But knowledge is defense. Understanding these aberrations, comprehending how they think and what they desire, grants you the insight necessary to recognize and resist their influence. When you dream impossible things, you can identify far realm corruption before it takes root. When you encounter tentacled horrors, or floating ice spheres, or ancient intelligences, You know what you face and what strategies might save you. When reality seems to bend in ways it should not, you understand that the barrier has grown thin and you must retreat before the madness claims you. The vigil continues. The gatekeepers maintain their seals. Heroes venture into aberration territories and return with knowledge purchased in blood. Scholars study the far realm from safe distances, always careful not to gaze too deeply into the abyss. And you, now aware of what lurks beyond the veil, can walk through the world with eyes open to dangers that most never perceive until too late. And remember, the next time you see something that should not be, the next time reality feels wrong in ways you cannot articulate, that the far realm is always watching, always waiting, always pressing against the barriers that keep it at bay. Stay vigilant, stay sane, and thank you for listening.